former undercover cops of Reddit. What is the craziest thing you had to do to not blow your cover? I must have been 15 when one day the doorbell rang and I opened the door to two guys looking very much like real tough street guys. They showed me their badges and asked for my mum or dad. Turned out that they wanted to stake out a public playground behind our garden that was used by some broncos for their mules. People drinking large amounts of water and puking up little packages with some substance in it. There was a multi-story bank near the playground, but the bank didn't want anything to do with it. So they asked my parents whether they could set up a surveillance team on our terrace for a couple of days. My parents allowed it, and my mum prepared food for the guys all week long. My dad did undercover for several years and talked about a M-head that he hung out with all the time and even babysat her kids when she went out to get high. This went on for several months while they were figuring out who the big dealer was and acquiring warrants. He grew a beard, had a fake kid, drove an old crappy car. Eventually they got warrants to bust a bunch of people in the drug ring, and he actually was part of the SWAT team at the time and was part of the group that smashed indoors and arrested her and a bunch of others in the area. He had to wear a balaclava to protect his identity when with the SWAT team. He said it was actually really difficult because he had become an important part of those kids' lives and was kind of attached to them, and now they had no mother and had to be taken to Child Protective Services. I never got to ask him more questions about this before he passed, but I have no idea how he balanced this crazy second life and then came home and acted like a normal husband and father in our family. I know a guy who often went undercover as a junkie. He was committed. He'd stop showering for a while before a gig and pee on his tracksuit before going into work. He was so good that he managed to get the same dealer convicted twice in the space of a year, and they never suspected he was the rat. He had multiple police records under different names too. City cop here. We don't do too much long-term undercover, but our general orders have a policy covering use of drugs on duty in certain circumstances. While it doesn't specify that we can do drugs, it states that if we consume them we have to immediately respond to our department's health clinic for documentation and treatment. The use of the word immediately made me imagine the undercover cop taking a puff of a joint and standing up straight away, speed-dealing the department and walking out reporting the incident. I once was the gardener for a cop who worked undercover in the flush trade to identify pimps, traffickers and extract underage kids. She retired early due to mental health issues likely stemming from Greek use during her time undercover. To keep cover she would do the drugs that were being offered used. Of course things spiraled out of control for her and suddenly she's on permanent paid leave and she stays in the house most days hiding from the world. So for her, what she did to keep cover is offer up her sanity in exchange for some successful arrests. Not a cop but a guy my mom dated for a long time was. Older guy, in his 70s now. He was fresh out of the academy and at the Asbury Park riots. Sad scary crap. And then was an undercover narcotics cop for 14 years during the 70s and 80s with the NJSP. He was Puerto Rican and spoke Spanish, was an ex-Marine, and became a state trooper. They utilized his ability to blend in with organized crime in the Latin community. He had to do coke in front of a bunch of dudes during a buy one night, and basically stuck his knife in and blew a mound up his nose. Then he started having a minor paranoia panic attack that they were going to find out he was a cop. Thanks to the gram of blow he just took to the dome, he was breathing heavy and went out for air. His heart was pounding out of his chest. Panicking over how to get out of it, one of the gangsters came outside to talk to him. He's ready to run or fight. Guy goes, "Man, I've never seen someone snort that much at once, man. You okay?" He sighs a huge sigh of relief and was like, "Yeah, I never did that much. I'm having trouble breathing ahead." The guy was really nice. Brings him a drink and they smoked a cig. Everyone is joking that he has the heart of a lion to take that much. He actually felt bad about locking that one guy up when it all went down. Think he said he tried to help him or get a reduced sentence or something. There are other stories. My father worked for Unsuspecting. He told me about an incident where his guys set up a sting to bust some broncos who turned out to be local police setting up their own sting. They figured it out when they tried to bust each other. This is the Spider-Man meme but in real life. My cousin was an undercover ATF agent. Anyway, they were trying to bust some guys for illegal alcohol distribution and were building a rapport by going undercover. My cousin doesn't take his ATF badge with him when he's undercover because if anyone ever saw it, he could get shot. Anyway, some hot-headed black and white cops came over and started harassing them. My cousin couldn't blow his cover, but pretty soon the police started getting physical and they beat crap out of my cousin and the guys he is trying to get evidence from. They take them all into the police station only to find out that my cousin is ATF. My cousin was peeved because cops aren't supposed to beat people up. He is currently filing a lawsuit against that police department. Good on your cousin for filing a lawsuit and actually trying to get some justice on those cops. And he deserves a promotion for managing to keep his cover through all that. I have gone undercover online to infiltrate child porn core rings. Nothing too intense, but I had to interact with suspects online over phone who were freaking sick in the head and act like it was not the most vile crap in the world. I've heard about undercover cops in these situations having to actually possess child P as well. Wasn't sure how true that was. If it is true, I can't imagine ever putting myself in this situation. Not very exciting, but a guy that worked with me was going to this biker bar frequently to get in with a gang. Drug related. He didn't want to get hammered and do something stupid, so he would take his beers into the bathroom with him, dump out half and fill it with water. As a former correctional officer, we had a situation where a major police department planted a cop in the prison to get information on a guy they believed was orchestrating hits from inside the prison. The warden knew and I knew, by accident, but not a single other CO knew, nor did any of the staff, including medical, and that's the way they wanted it. He went through receiving. He was categorized and placed. It was wild. He was there for a week. Got the info they needed and got him out. It didn't become public knowledge that he was undercover until after I had left, and it was a long while after as they were making a case. That was a surreal moment. My friend used to be a state trooper. She told me about how she used to have to go undercover as a H to try to catch Johns. She didn't do so well, though. She was far too polite, so they all knew something was up. I am former law enforcement. I did a few deployments in a surveillance capacity to sit near targets in restaurants and bars to overhear conversations. Sorry to disappoint, but I didn't do anything particularly crazy. Criminals just tend to talk about the same crap that everyone else talks about, women and sports. Publicly they tend not to talk too much about their criminal activities, but you can still glean information from places they say they went to and people they say they know. Not a former undercover cop, but I have a second-hand story about an undercover cop. So, this guy appears out of nowhere and befriends a relative of mine who was involved in illegal stuff. Dude was very friendly and just down to party. Had money, paid for, product, everything. Would drop in on parties and even allegedly hooked up with hoes. Then he placed an order much larger than before. Few weeks later, relative of mine is arrested and is currently in prison. Craziest thing an undercover cop had to do to keep their cover? Buy drugs and frick B. My friend who was an undercover cop said that multiple times he had to let himself be arrested to not blow his cover. Like when a sting was going down or whatever, instead of being like, hey, I'm a cop, he would get arrested along with everyone else. One time a Homeland Security officer came up to my house undercover, flashed his badge and asked if he could come in. Once he was in, he pulled out a piece of paper with my neighbor's face on it. He asked if I had seen him around lately. When I asked what he did, and let him know I haven't seen him around, he told me what he was wanted for: sexual violation, child abuse, drugs, the whole lot. Turns out he violated his stepdaughter, and once he found out he was wanted, he went back to El Salvador. I thought they only flashed their badges in the movies, but turns out the crap's real. I worked as a transcriptionist for a while, and I transcribed some tape taken off of body mics of undercover officers working a very notorious domestic terrorism case. It was crazy. They would sound like an absolute backwoods hill people lunatic while talking to their marks. Then later, when talking to the other police officers, would sound all business and like a very professional person. I have a relative that was undercover narcotics. Before he started, we had a family meeting explaining that if we saw him out and about, we were not to approach him and not to say anything to him and a few other dos and don'ts. He will come to you if he's not undercover at the moment. Not a cop, but in college I took a few criminal justice classes. Our professor, who I will call Bob, was a cop for 15 or so years and had gone undercover in the 80s for a very long time. Bob was biker as a hobby and he was sent undercover to break up a M ring in the biker community. Bob arranged to buy some M from some guy, and shortly after the buy the dealer was arrested. The dealer's sister started telling everyone she thought Bob was a cop, and some of the other bikers started asking him questions. So day or so after the sister started accusing Bob of being a narc, the entire group was at a bar. Bob told a few of the guys to meet him outside in a few minutes, and Bob told the sister he had some M for her and to come outside. When they finally got out there, Bob told her, "Where I'm from, friends don't call friends narcs." He then beat the crap out of her in front of the entire group. He kicked her as hard as he could between her legs, which, while not as painful if you're a woman, still hurts. Then he said he punched her 4 or 5 times in the face. Hard. He said he didn't wanna do it, but after he did that no one ever accused him of being a cop again. My cousin, who's in secret services, acted like a junkie, homeless beggar and semi-crazy Muslim religious salesman owning stall for surveillance purposes. So much for the secret. My cousin worked undercover in the biker community. He was really into working out and bodybuilding, so he managed to convince everybody that he treated his body like a temple and didn't drink, do drugs, or eat like crap. That wasn't very far from the truth, so it wasn't hard for him to play that part. He is also a former Marine sharpshooter, so he is tough as nails and pretty heavily tattooed, so he definitely gave off a "don't frick with me" vibe. I know a guy, retired police officer, who works as an investigator of crooked doctors. He dresses up in disguises and is given a fake name to use. He goes into doctors' offices and tries to find out if a doctor who is suspected of overprescribing narcotics is legit or not. He told me a story about a time he went in to see a dentist about a minor toothache and walked out there with a prescription for Percocet and Dilaudid. He says there are plenty of legit doctors out there, but there are also a lot of careless ones who give in to their drug-seeking patients. It wasn't me, but my grandfather. Guy worked narcotics, had to get in with some guys who dealt him and was pretending to be a user himself. I believe he actually had to shoot up once or twice. One day one of the higher ups was starting to get suspicious. Didn't believe my grandpa was actually a user or anything because he didn't have any marks on his arm, where they normally do, and my grandpa told them that he doesn't shot there, but near his pelvis. Said he was more than happy to pull down his pants and undies to show him. Dude didn't want to see any dong and my grandpa got away with it. He lives in a whole but other state now for safety reasons because a lot of the guys he put away years ago are now getting out. Not an officer, but was on the wrong end of an undercover operation. In college I developed a liking for opioids and it quickly spiraled out of control. I couldn't afford my habit, so I started selling to afford using. I sold very small amounts and only to my friends. It was a horrible thing to do, but addiction makes you so crazy things and not think clearly. A kid I regularly sold to, I'll call him Larry, came over my house one night with his best friend from high school. The kid looked about our age, young 20s at the time, and I considered Larry to be a very good friend of mine. I had known him all 4 years we had been at college and hung out fairly regularly. He asked if his friend could have my number as he was moving to our area for work and needed a connect. I said sure, and that was that. I never sold on campus, and for some reason this kid only wanted to meet me in the parking lot on campus. I kept telling him no until finally one time I hit a dry patch and needed all the help I could get. I agreed to meet him in the school parking lot. I gave him 2 pills for $60 and turned to get out of his truck. I felt a hand on my forearm and turned to see another guy with one hand on me and a gun in the other pointed directly at me. Figured I was getting robbed. Turned out it was the police and my friend had set me, and others, up in an effort to get his sentence reduced. The system is so fricked up that their one goal is to arrest college kids on campus and dangle large sentences with mandatory minimums on them, so they are forced to become a CI and avoid the hefty sentences attached to the mandatory minimums. They are OR. You and you're supposed to keep in constant contact with the undercover officer and supply him with names and targets they can arrest. The issue is you're not under any supervision and you're not expected to rehabilitate yourself. Larry ended up continuing to use despite being a CI. The cops don't drug test nor help with the necessary rehab, they just want to make more and more arrests. It's a bullcrap system that takes advantage of young vulnerable addicts. Larry lived alone and was required to keep all of his dealings private so that the officer's cover wasn't blown and Larry's status as a CI wasn't jeopardized. He went silent for a few days and no one was sure why. His best friend decided to see what was up and went to his apartment. Larry had OD'd alone in his apartment about 48 hours before his best friend found him. I didn't end up helping the cops and instead went into rehab, then jail, released on parole and concurrent probation. I was facing a mandatory minimum of 4 years and the judge said I should thank him for his lenience as I could have gone to jail for up to 30 years. Fortunately I'm still alive. I know a lot of people who lost the fight with addiction. Not a cop, but I did work for the liquor board in the city next to my town busting bars for underage drinking. When I would get served I would have to text the officer in charge and he would come in and take my picture with the drink, then find the bar. Typically a few $100s, and the bar would get a strike. 3 strikes and they lose their liquor license. When I would get served I am not allowed to drink any alcoholic beverages. Only once did I actually have to drink the drink served to me. I was at a sketchy biker bar and they're known for underage drinking and already have 2 strikes. They're also known for getting rough with the informants, like some employees and patrons assaulting the kids, 18-20. So I walk in and ask for a Budweiser. I show him my real ID and he serves me my beer. Before I can even pull out my phone the bartender grabs my wrist and asks me if I work for the liquor board. I tell him no and he says okay, then chug your beer. So I slam the bottle of Bud and he lets me go and then tells me I have my eye on you boy and gets me another Bud. I then take a Snapchat of me at the bar with my drink and hightail it out of the bar. I then show the picture to the officer and tell him everything that happened and he heads into the bar and ends up finding the bar and the bartender and giving them their last strike. They end up taking everything to court and I get called in as a witness and have to testify in court everything that happened. The bar loses the case and when I am walking out to my car the owner yells to me, "Hey kid, watch your crap. You'll get what's coming to you." So far nothing has happened to me. This happened about 3 years ago, so I don't think anything will happen to me. You have been visited by the ingenious Joe. Comment brain so you always see the glass half full. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.